Hi everyone, it's Nicole here today for Simon Says Stamp, and I have got a card featuring the new Pool Place stamps and dies, as well as some other new stamps and dies from the Simon Says Stamp Splash of Color release. It's an awesome release. It has tons of new stamps and dies, and I'm so excited. 12 new ink colors. Here's a look at the 12 new ink colors. I've already created some little ink swatches. If you have followed me, I did a little video tutorial on how I'm creating my ink swatches last month, and I'll link that here. Here's a comparison of the Splash of Color release on the left with the Color of Fun release on the right. And then here's a look at all of them mixed together so you can kind of see all the different colors. I'm showing you these because I'm going to use some of my inks a little differently than just straight on ink stamping and inking them. I'm going to start out my card, and I'm going to create my background instead of starting with those cute little boy and girl images, and really build up my cards from the background up. And I am die cutting several rectangles using the largest of the stitched rectangles dies. This is another exclusive die collection from Simon Says Stamp. I use it all the time. It's from a few releases back. And it just makes it so easy to build a scene when all of your base pieces start out the same size. Now I cut everything from white cardstock because I am going to take some other dies, some border dies. This is actually an older die. This is from the Stitched Slopes and Hills die collection, but this is going to be the sand on the forefront of my card, and I'm going to build that first so I kind of know how deep or how high to make the waves. The waves are a new die collection called the Border Waves, and there's 3 different styles, if you will. I'm going to use kind of this bigger wave, and then the smaller one, and then there's another one that looks even more wave-ish, I guess. But 3 different styles, so you can really mix and match and whatever look you're trying to achieve. So from some of these extra rectangles, I am die cutting the components to build the water and the sand. Once I have both of those waves die cut, I can start coloring in this white cardstock to make my scene. So instead of die cutting from cardstock or pattern paper, or even using, you've probably seen maybe even distress inks used to color cardstock, I'm actually going to use the Simon Says Stamp die inks. I'm going to use the new High Dive ink to color in my waves, and I'm using the ink blending tools with the little round foam. These are the mini ink blending tools, and I'm just going to switch out my foam for a clean foam for each color. You can see they blend really nicely. Now they look really dark here, and probably if you noticed at the beginning of the video with the photo of the finished card, the colors have muted and have evened out. So any of that blotchiness that you're seeing right now really evens out with the dye ink. Because the dye ink is absorbed into the paper and does tend to fade a little bit as it dries, it will fade and even out and really look nice. For the sand, I used an older Simon Says Stamp ink, the khaki ink. It was just the best ink, I thought, for brown wise for the sand. Then I'm using another new ink, the Lakeshores ink, for the sky, which I thought was the perfect sky for an ocean themed card. This is a good example of how it looks really blotchy, but in the finished card, the ink really dries nicely and evens out. For the sunshine, I am die cutting this from another new die set called the Hello Sunshine Frame. It's a frame, and then it also has a sunshine. But because those components, you can kind of see it there in the top of the screen, are so small, instead of trying to color them after I die cut them, I colored a scrap piece of white cardstock and then die cut that from that colored portion of the cardstock, and that made it much easier. And I'm just going to use a straight pin to pop all those little pieces out so that I can keep them in order, and then I can place them there on my little scene. So I'm going to use the circle there and most of the sun rays. I'm going to go ahead and use a glue dot to hold the center of the sunshine down, and this is a really, enough time has passed, you can see that those inks have really blended out and smoothed out nicely. Just another way you can use your inks and get the most out of all of these fun colors. I stamped a greeting there that says, "Is my favorite accessory." This is from the Simon Says Stamp Happy Block Greetings stamp set. And then the word sunshine is actually the die that is in the August card kit this month. And I die cut that from the white cardstock as well, and I'm going to leave it white so it really pops against this colorful background. Using the zig glue pen to attach the sun rays and also the word sunshine, just adding some little dots of glue on the back, and then I can flip that over and place it right on my card base, or this panel that I am creating this fun little scene. Both cards are created exactly the same. The only difference in each card is one uses the little girl and one uses the little boy. So I'm only going to show the creation of all of this once. For the sand, to make it look even more like sand, I am using the white Sakura gel pen, and I'll use the gold gel pen that comes in the August card kit as well to go right over those little white dots, and that is going to give a much more sandy or beach looking look to that bottom part of the card. I haven't even stamped the boy or girl yet, and you can already tell how cute the scene is coming together. Next, I am ready to stamp that boy and girl. I'm going to use some Memento Tuxedo black ink to stamp the boy, and then I'm going to use the little frog image there for his little inner tube, and the duck image for the little girl. Go ahead and get her stamped. Before I start coloring, I am going to use the fish from this stamp set and use the Hot Mama ink from the Splash of Color release. And then I'm also using the melon ink from the Color of Fun release to stamp those little fish. And I went ahead and just did that all at once because when I get my images colored in, I want to die cut them all at the same time. This little splash is also from the Pool Play stamp set, and I'm going to stamp that with my ink there that I used for the waves, the High Dive ink. And then I'm going to go ahead and start coloring in my images. I'm using Copic markers today, and I'm going to color in the skin. I'm only going to show that on one because I did both of them exactly this with the exact same colors. The colors I'm using are shown in the upper left corner of the screen. I started with my lightest base color, then I'm using my darkest color to add some little outline and detail. Then I'm going to go in with my mid-tone color and pull that dark color out a little further, get that depth and dimension. And then I'll go back with my lightest color and blend all of this out really well. If it blends too much, you can go back in with any of those markers and really add the detail that you need to get a more dimensional looking colored image. Next, I colored in the little swim dress on the girl. I'm using RV 63, 55, and 66. I have found the RV 63 does tend to bleed a little bit, so you want to be careful when blending that out. I laid it down as my base color and then went in with my darkest, which is the RV 66. And then blend out with my RV 55, my mid-tone. And here's that lightest color. And I just want to be careful that I don't oversaturate the paper too much so that it bleeds outside the lines. I'm going to go back in with my darkest right around that inner tube and add a little more shadowing. And then I'm going to start coloring in the inner tube with some yellow since this is a little duck. I love that you can change the faces so you can mix and match whatever you want to create here. I am using Y11, 08, and 19 for the yellow parts of the duck. And then for the little duck bill, I'm going to use YR04 and 09. I'm going to go in here and really add some darker shadowing where she's holding on to that inner tube. And then color in the little duck bill with some orange. So super fun. I love the little interactive element where you can mix and match. Well, since I have the orange markers out already, I'm going to use those for his swim trunks. Just a couple colors here. And I'm going to show you how I dress up both her swim dress and the swim trunks after I get the images all colored in. You can definitely dress them up. Also, since I had those yellow markers out, I went ahead and did his little fins there on his feet, flippers, whatever they're called, with some yellows, the same yellows I used for the duck. And then I'm introducing some green here since I'm going to create his inner tube and make it a frog. I'm using YG 21, 25, and 17. Just like the pinkish or pinky purple there that I did for the dress, the YG 21 tends to really bleed if you oversaturate, so you want to be careful. You can see it blends out really well, but it can blend so much that it will oversaturate the paper and start bleeding outside the line. So give it a little bit of time to dry in between coloring so you don't ruin your image. Go ahead and color the frog's face. Build up that color. That was bothering me a little bit that it was so light there in the center. That looks a lot better. I can go back over now with my darkest color to deepen up those shadows. Go ahead and make his goggles outline green. And we're going to dress those up a little bit too as soon as all the coloring and die cutting is done. Going to color their hair exactly the same for both images, especially since these are going to be on two individual cards, so I'm not too worried about having them be too much alike since they won't be right next to each other on the same card. I started with my base color, the E31, and then I'm feathering in some E57 and then E55. If you blend out too much with the feathering with your mid-tone color, you can always go back over with E57. I almost always finish with my darkest color to really deepen and darken any areas that I think need it. I'm going to make her goggles outline pink, just like her swim dress. And I didn't show it because I kind of forgot until I got almost ready to die cut the image, but I forgot to color in her flip-flops, and those will be pink as well. And then the little accent on the sides of her goggles are green. And then I'll go ahead and color his hair in as well, just like hers, same colors, the E31, 55, and 57. I love watching the images come to life once you get them all colored in. For the frog's eyes, I did use a little C1 and C00, just to give them a hint of color. Here's that white gel pen, and I'm adding a little plaid design to his swim trunks, and then I'll add a little dot detail along the top of her swim dress and then along the scallop bottom. On the die, I was pointing out there, do not cut those little portions off that cut the little inside where their arms are next to their body. It will cut those out. Do not cut through those with your little snips. The one on the girl especially are really thin, so you have to be kind of careful. You don't want to cut through those because you want to keep those so it cuts out that little inside portion you can see there. I have die cut all the pieces for my card now, or cards. I'm going to lay everything out and I can start putting it all together. Here's what those little inner tubes look like with the cute little characters. I know when my two oldest were little, we had some cute little inner tubes kind of similar to this. I'm going to tuck those fish into the waves, one of them with the fin up in the air for that little splash, and then the other one kind of face up. I thought that would be kind of a fun little element. There wasn't a lot going on in that part of the card, and it felt a little blah. So the addition of the little splash and the fish add a nice pop of color and interest that really works with the whole design of the card. So I can put it together, or go ahead and adhere everything down and add those finishing touches. So for the eyes, I'm going to use a black gel pen. That's one of my favorite tips, is to use that black gel pen. It makes all of the eyes pop. And I even added it on the fish that's sticking up. You can tell the difference here, especially how the eyes really pop once you add that black pen. I'm going to use the Wink of Stella Clear Glitter pen over the fish and the little splash there on each of the cards. And then I'm going to take some glossy accents and I'm going to go over the glass, or what would be like the glass or the clear part of the goggles on both images. And then I'm going to let these sit and dry for probably a good hour. I went and cooked supper and did all of that, so they probably sat for an hour to an hour and a half. Once those are nice and dry, your card will be all finished. Thanks for watching this video showcasing stamps, dies, and inks from the new Simon Says Stamp Splash of Color release. The supplies I've used are listed and linked below the video on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.